That leads me to my next question. Why are you starting, or why do you have 7 wide receivers on your team? I mean, we can only start 2 or 3 at the most with the flex player, and I noticed you have 7 wide receivers.
I didn't realize I have 7 wide receivers.
You don't? Okay.
No.
So,
but I think that's pretty good.
okay.
Well, 5 of them are hurt.
Okay. And I noticed with that wide receivers, running backs, you've been playing fantasy football quite a while,
yeah.
And you notice how important running backs are to your success. And
I'm finding that less true.
Okay, let me finish. Well, if you talk to most experts, they would tell you running backs are the most important. You can disagree with that, but if you go through year after year, running backs are a very important position in this league. And I noticed you are 10 of 10 teams in points accumulated from running backs. Why have you focused so much on wide receiver points and not give a hoot about the most important position in fantasy football?
Well, very easily. I look at the strategy that's going to get me wins as opposed to points. I find that losers talk about points. They talk about all kinds of conditional types of things. They don't talk about wins and losses. Now, I happen to know that as bad as you think Idaho Do-Overs is, it is slightly ahead record-wise of talk radio junkies, who you said last week, if I recall, that they are the best team in the league.
And I think they are. And I think they proved it last week, scoring 141 points. In fact, the Guru has them rated the top team almost every week.
Well, I think that's wonderful.
Well, okay, you're talking
about
points.
See, that's another loser comment.
Okay. I noticed the reason points aren't important to you is because out of the playoff teams, in fact, of all the teams, you are 9th in place of 10 teams in points. And usually points accumulates either wins or losses. And so you do have a decent record, but you have very low points. Don't you think that's going to catch up with you in the playoffs?
No, I don't. I think my strategy will continue to be successful as I go through the playoffs.
Okay. Now, coaching rating. Talk radio is #1 in coaching rating. What that means, week after week, they make all the right moves and all the right players. With such a quality team and such a quality coach, do you pretty much foresee just that talk radio is going to win the Super Bowl and it's not even going to be close?
No, actually, I think Zots have a better chance than most people of winning.
Okay.
Although I refer to their owner as the Greg Jennings of the Fantasy Football League, since he seems to have all the answers to everything. Okay. Whether you're talking about nuts or soup.
Yeah, I agree with that. However, I got to disagree with you about him making it to the Super Bowl. His MVP this year, Brett Favre. Did you happen to see him get hurt last Sunday?
I did.
And it's a bad shoulder injury. With his age, I don't think he could come back from the injury. In fact, I reported it first. He's not playing again this year. He's done.
Well,
however, how can you expect him to win the Super Bowl without Brett Favre?
Well, my source tells
Is it because he's your son?
No.
He's your firstborn, isn't he?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
My source tells me that he will be zinging the ball around on Sunday.
Okay. Left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed.
Okay.
Although with him it doesn't seem to matter which hand he uses.
Yeah. Now, your job requires you to travel
Yes.
quite a bit, right?
Yes.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a consultant, and I work for various companies throughout the country.
Okay. Let me ask this again. What do you do for a living?
I help stores run their business.
You help stores run their business. And how do you do this? How do you help them?
By giving them advice and recommendations.
What kind of advice would you give them? I'm a business owner. I own this fantasy football league on the Kisher Islands. What kind of business, what kind of advice can you give me?
Well, yours, I would probably tell you to stick your head in some cold water first.
Yeah.
To settle you down. You seem to be really nervous tonight. And I really don't know what that's about. But I'm not here for a therapy session.
Would that kind of advice be the reason that you don't have a whole lot of businesses? Because of that kind of advice you give to business owners?
Oh, I'm not sure I understand. the
Okay.
question.
That kind of advice you said you would give me, is that the reason, is that the kind of advice you give to other people? I'm wondering if that's the kind of advice you give, that might be the reason you don't have a whole lot of business to go to.
Well, I do have a lot of businesses that I go to,
Okay.
by the way.
How many do you go to?
Well, I work for about 10 different companies.
Okay,
and
do you
I'm busy
think-
most weeks of the year?
Do you think if you didn't have such a sour attitude, you could increase that to 20 or maybe even 30 companies?
Well, if I wanted to,
Yeah,
but I'm very pleased where I am.
okay.